The discipline of nonprofit marketing tackles the mechanics of difficult behavioral change, specializing in social challenges that commercial entities avoid. It does not simply mirror the tactics used to sell burgers or airplane seats. It is built for the friction of human resistance. Public goods theory suggests the social sector originates where the state halts. When a government fails to provide essential baseline services to its citizens, nonprofits emerge to patch the civic infrastructure. Contract failure theory identifies gaps where for-profit corporations cannot be trusted, or where the inherent drive for profit actively compromises the quality of a service. Subsidy theory reveals the financial tether. While nonprofits operate independently, the shape and scale of what they can offer are ultimately dictated by government tax breaks and grant allocations. A nation's reliance on these organizations varies. In highly diverse populations, government consensus is difficult to reach, expanding the role of private nonprofits. Conversely, social democratic regimes with massive government infrastructures see a smaller volunteer sector. These organizations are structural bridges, engineered to span the inevitable failures of both the public and private sectors. There is a lingering assumption that nonprofits are localized, small-scale enterprises populated by do-gooders who harbor a dismissive attitude toward efficient management. The macroeconomic reality proves otherwise. The social sector is a massive global force that accounts for a substantial component of total societal output. Economist Burton Weisbrod identifies this as the commercial transformation of the nonprofit sector. Organizations are moving away from passive philanthropy and turning aggressively to the commercial marketplace for support. The boundaries are dissolving. We see major hospitals entering the consumer fitness business, museums generating vast incomes from massive retail catalogs, and research universities forming highly profitable alliances with private corporations to generate revenue. The management challenges required to run these hybrid models often exceed the operational issues faced by traditional businesses. Corporations optimize for margins. Nonprofits must optimize for complex human intervention while balancing highly restricted funding pools. Surviving this transformation requires abandoning the amateur approach to philanthropy and adopting a rigorous analysis of the market. The operational complexity of the sector stems from a dual market imperative. A commercial business markets to the customer who pays. A nonprofit must simultaneously generate revenue from donors and deliver services to beneficiaries. In this second market, there is rarely an exchange of cash. The benefits are invisible, relying entirely on social or psychological utility. This cost-benefit matrix quantifies these intangible transactions. In traditional environments, the friction is financial, giving up economic assets for a product or surgery. Nonprofits operate in social and psychological columns. You ask an audience to give up ingrained ideas, personal time, or unlearned behaviors. Executing this calculus in the developing world multiplies the difficulty. Target audiences may be illiterate or entirely unfamiliar with the basic scientific concepts necessary to understand the intervention being offered. Because the transaction relies on altering psychology rather than exchanging currency, the friction of the nonprofit sale is exponentially higher than moving a consumer product. Early social marketing operated under a product mindset, the assumption that if a service like a community clinic was sufficiently beneficial, people would automatically use it without further persuasion. Organizations then shifted to a sales mindset. This model operates by metaphorically shouting at an audience, demanding they stop doing what everyone already knows is destructive. It rarely works.
Modern intervention requires a target audience mindset. You must reverse engineer the exact perceptions and apathies of the market, packaging the value proposition entirely around the psychological state of the user. Look at the Champions Against Bullying NiceBot campaign. They built an automated bot that sent randomly generated positive messages to individual users every 30 seconds. By utilizing the very mechanism used for cyber harassment, they executed the first-ever use of spam for good, effectively reaching 14 million people across 142 countries. Engineering campaigns around audience metrics introduces ethical hazards. Using poverty porn to trigger rapid donations actively strips the beneficiaries of their dignity. Effective management is a constant tension. You must execute aggressive, targeted behavioral interventions without violating the ethical boundaries regarding human dignity. Nonprofits operate within a fractured public environment. Navigating it requires mapping out exactly who holds leverage over the organization's mission. This circular stakeholder map for the American Cancer Society visualizes the density of the ecosystem. A single strategic move must simultaneously satisfy the rigid demands of legislators, the emotional expectations of the general public, and the direct needs of patients. You cannot offer a blanket message. Success dictates crafting independent, specialized marketing mixes for each disparate node without contradicting the core mission. Identifying external threats requires the same level of granular mapping. Nonprofits must define competition far beyond their direct organizational rivals. This typology model isolates hidden threats. On the far right is enterprise competition, direct rivalry against specific musicals. Moving left is form competition, choosing a rock concert instead. Then generic competition, staying home to watch TV. Finally, desire competition fights basic human apathy or household chores. A nonprofit's truest competitors are rarely similar charities. They are deeply ingrained habits, alternative demands on time, and the sheer inertia of the status quo. Once an organization maps its internal stakeholders and broad external competition, it must figure out how to safely scale its behavioral interventions. This offer market opportunity matrix serves as the primary portfolio planning tool to chart that expansion. The safest growth path is market penetration. You maximize your existing services and deliver them to your current audience with greater efficiency. Mid-level risk requires modifying the delivery. This includes modification for dispersed markets, transitioning physical services to web-based offerings for users abroad. The most aggressive growth strategy is total innovation, establishing new departments for specific institutional markets. Traversing this matrix is difficult. It requires a constant reassessment of volunteer utilization and the continuous securement of new funding streams to hold off encroachment from for-profit competitors. Institutional growth in the social sector is never an accident. It is mapped through deliberate adjustments to geographic reach and program offerings. The nonprofit sector is a multi-billion-dollar global arena. It is tasked with fulfilling the civic and psychological voids left behind by the failures of the public and private markets. Navigating its dual market system means every strategic choice is a compromise. Operations must satisfy the economic realities of donors while simultaneously unpacking the psychological complexities of the beneficiaries. To survive, organizations must maintain a relentless target audience mindset. They must calculate invisible behavioral costs, isolate generic competition, and respect ethical boundaries. Achieving lasting social change requires moving past the amateur image of the do-gooder to deploy a rigorous, data-driven system of behavioral design and market analysis.